Hello and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton. And today we're going to tell you how your neighborhood can get a grant from the city. My guests are from the Neighborhoods Department, Gonçalo Borges. I did that right. This was hard. Yes. Cashayla Rodgers, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So neighborhood grants have been around for a while, right?
30 years or so.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. And what's the goal? How do you expect this money? And I don't mean you, but you're the staff. What is this money for? How would neighborhoods use it?
I would say that the first principle of this program, the different grants we have, before even being about money, is about bringing people together. And that's the very first step that the City of Hampton wants people to give, is to bring people together. And these grants oftentimes are used for programming that brings folks within the neighborhood or even from the outside of the neighborhood into the neighborhood together. So that's the first step. And so that's the first thing that we always like to say, is that we want to mobilize people, we want people to engage and to create something for the future. So it's also kind of one of the goals of these program, the Neighborhood Development Fund, is kind of planting a seed for the future. So that's one of the main aspects. And the other part is improving either the cultural or social aspects of the neighborhood or the infrastructural aspects of the neighborhood.
I know there were signs that have been purchased in several neighborhoods using some of these funds.
Yes, actually, that's one of the many requests that we get are for neighborhood entryway signs. And so those typically look like monument brick signs. We've gotten requests for LED signs in the past. However, what folks don't realize often is that the grant funds can be used for a number of different projects. Like Gonçalo shared, they are for connectivity and infrastructure. So signs are a part of that. But other organizations in our network have used them to build gazebos or park spaces. So there's a plethora of options that folks can use the grant funds for: public art projects, et cetera, et cetera.
So these grants have been around for a while, but a couple of things are new. Primarily, you've streamlined the process, right?
Correct. Before the recent changes that we did in 2023, only organizations registered with the city could apply to the Community Connections program, which is the smaller $4,000 grant. So you had to be an organization. Nowadays, you don't have to be. So one of the steps is, if you have a neighborhood group that is not registered with the city, or you are some sort of organization that has sort of a place-based nature, so connect to a neighborhood or part of the city, you can now partner with a registered organization and do sort of a joint venture application. So that's one of the things that we facilitated.
So like some of the bigger neighborhoods could maybe have like a splinter party on a part of it, like WIF, for example, is huge. That's a lot of people to have in one place. But they could maybe partner with the WIF Neighborhood Association and have smaller area get-togethers.
Correct. So that's one of the steps. This is for the Community Connections program. And we have a different grant, which is the Places and Spaces program, and that grant is more focused on improving infrastructural aspects of the neighborhood, and they do need to be in the public right-of-way, so they cannot be private property. So let's say if you want to improve the quality of the sidewalk, or you want some beautiful flowers on the sidewalk with planters, you can apply for this grant and do those improvements. Now, those are that aspect is important because oftentimes folks don't know about that has to be in a public space. So that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about today to clarify. So it needs to be on a public right of way. But also we have, prior to these changes, you had to download a PDF to your computer or whatever, and you had to go through the printing, or you had to come to our desk and ask for an application.
So you still had to use a computer, you just didn't use it for much.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So now you can fill out the application online, and we try to make it as simple as possible. Of course, there's a review process, but we're trying to And even as we go, we are trying to understand how we can improve it better. But looking at it right now, we think that the most of the times it will take you, if you have all the documentation together, it will take you probably 15 minutes or so to go through that application. So we're looking at that from that perspective.
Okay. And you guys are the staff, but
Yes.
this process is kind of directed by the neighborhood commission, right?
Correct.
Yes. So in the first phase of the application, the review is done by the Resource Review Committee. And they're a smaller subsection of the Neighborhood Commission that's made up of maybe 7 or 8 neighborhood commissioners. That sole focus is reviewing those grants. So they're the first phase. And we invite guests who are applicants who have completed the application to sit in front of the committee and have that conversation about their project.
That's great. So you mentioned documentation. What do I need to have? Like before I go in and start to do this, what are you asking people?
We're asking folks to engage with their neighbors, for one. And what that looks like is minutes at meetings where where votes were taken, flyers, door knocking, or anything like that that demonstrates outreach to your neighbors, and that they've bought into this project, that this is something they see as a priority. And then we ask folks to complete the application itself, answering questions about the process, the timeline, how many people are involved, volunteer hours, a budget as well. Gonçalo, am I missing anything?
No, and essentially, what Cashayla said is absolutely accurate. I think that is very important to survey your neighborhoods, not literally doing a,
Right.
a survey door to door. Doesn't have to be that, but that is a good step. But I think, yes, that's the foundation in bringing the evidence that you gather people, that there's that support, that's really important. One of the things that we often ask are sort of records from meetings. If you are planning this proposal, a project, we want or the committee wants to look at sort of the planning stages that had happened before that. So like having the minutes of meetings or anything like that is always really good. If you have already given some steps, sort of trying to get a quote for whatever the paint that you're going to use, anything that can support your application, everything that can show that you have working together on the project will very much be appreciated by the neighborhood commission and their committee that allocates these grants. So I think that, when you said, it definitely covers it.
So interestingly, I know my neighborhood, for example, has become much closer because of a Facebook group. And so some of those planning and discussions may have happened on Facebook instead of a face-to-face meeting. Does that count?
Yes. In fact, folks often submit Facebook messages as evidence that they've done that outreach and engagement. So that's perfectly okay, and we welcome any form of evidence that folks submit.
And we have had situations where the resources committee that takes care of these grants, where they asked some organizations to please publicize it on social media. Please go to Facebook, because some organizations might not use the Facebook very much or social media, and some of the members of the committee have asked, yeah, please do that as part of we're going to give you the grant, but make sure that you go and publicize it, because we want you to connect with your neighbors. So.
All right. And so could this grant cover, for example, the city permit fees that you need to do if you're having an outdoor event?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's great, because that sort of levels the playing field. I think there are a lot of neighborhoods that don't have a lot of money to put into their events, which is, it's nice.
The only thing that you cannot cover with these grants is, let's say you bought 500 T-shirts and you printed the name of your neighborhood in it, and then you are selling it. So you cannot acquire merchandise to sell. You can gift it with that money. So whatever, if you apply for $3,000 or $4,000, that money can be used. You have to discriminate that on the application, but for sure it can be used to pay for the permit or feeding the volunteers at your event. Absolutely fine.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, and in some instances, if you are registered with the neighborhood commission, for neighborhood scale events, the permit fee is waived.
Oh, that's great. And I know, I'm not familiar with it because I wasn't the one who did it, but a few years ago, that process of being registered was simplified as well. So it should be a lot easier for folks to get registered, plan events, get some financial help, which is wonderful.
Right.
Yeah, in the past, or over the length of the neighborhood initiative, which Gonçalo pointed out earlier, was 30 years. In the beginning, folks had to go through an interview process to become registered with the neighborhood commission.
Oh my.
And we've eliminated that to, it is now a form that you complete online. And then the neighborhood commission resource review committee reviews those applications at their monthly meetings.
All right. Well, that sounds great. Where can people find an application?
On the community development website, and the community development website, you have to look for housing in neighborhoods, and within the housing in neighborhoods, you will have on the left side of your screen, you're going to have the application and the explanation for the registered neighborhood organization program, and also for the grants. So everything is there.
You know what? Let's make you a page that is hampton.gov/neighborhoods, and people can go directly there.
That will be wonderful.
Yes.
Okay, I'll do that as soon as we're done here. Speaking of being done here, is there anything else you want to add before we close?
Please apply and think creatively about what you can do with these funds. A lot of folks like to turn to neighborhood signs or a neighborhood block party, which are great things, but there are so many other creative alternatives that you can do to make a difference in your neighborhood. So I encourage folks to explore those options.
That would be great. And if you have some examples on the website of what other organizations have done, I think that would stimulate people thinking a little broader.
What a great idea.
That's a very good idea, Robert.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you. I think
Very
it's important to share this information.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Everybody lives in a neighborhood, and I hope that you will think about ways to get people in your neighborhood together, to show pride, to do things that strengthen our neighborhoods in Hampton. Thanks for watching.